Hey everyone. Alright, now let me just first get this off my chest. I just want to say I have been a huge Titanic fanatic ever since, oh my goodness, the third grade. And I've enjoyed doing research projects and book reports on it. And I guess you can say I know a lot. But also, maybe the reason why I love the Titanic so much is because its anniversary comes a few days after my birthday, because it sunk on April 15th, 1912, and my birthday is on April 11th, 2003. Now, I know what you're thinking. What is the research? Everyone knows that an iceberg sunk the RMS Titanic. But do you know how this piece of a glacier sunk this 50,000-ton ships? And do you know why this Titanic has still not been brought up from where it lies at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? Because it has been discovered in '85. They know where it is. Just anyway, that's what I want to talk to you about. First, a word about icebergs. Now, most people get icebergs mistaken. Most people think that icebergs are when seawater solidifies into a large solid ice block. However, they're not. Icebergs are a piece of a glacier that are made of snow, fresh water to be more exact. For the same reason ice cubes float in a glass. Water is unique that way is because the solid form of water is less dense than the liquid state of water. All right, so that's why icebergs float. So let's just move on. Now let me talk to you how boats float. Now I know you might already know how boats float, but let's just talk about it anyway. It's still interesting. All right. Probably a boat can only float if there's a perfect balance of the upthrust of water below the boat pushing upwards and a downward thrust of gravity pushing downwards. So that's how, if you mess with that and you mess with this perfect balance, then the ship is going to sink. And that's exactly what happened to the Titanic. So now let's just go. It all began at 11:50, or I think, no, not 11:50, 11:40 p.m. on April 14th of 1912, when Captain Edward J. Smith, who was the captain of the Titanic, and his crew spotted an iceberg heading their way. They tried to maneuver around it, and they almost missed it just by a hair, but they scraped against the right side of the hull. And maybe you don't know this, but most people on board were either sleeping, and the people who did hear this sound were probably like, it doesn't really matter because the Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable and that everything was fine, there was nothing to worry about. However, that was not the case. The Titanic wasn't sinkable, however, it was designed to be very difficult to sink. Let me explain. The Titanic had in all 16 watertight compartments, and Thomas Andrews, who's the head designer of the ship, had each one have an automatic door, so that if one compartment filled with water, all the other automatic sliding doors would close. In fact, the Titanic was designed so that as many as 4 compartments could fill up with water and the ship would still remain afloat. However, the Titanic had 5 compartments filled with water. So if you were part of the crew, if you were the captain, or if you were Thomas Andrews himself, you knew that the Titanic was going to sink in a matter of time, and it was a goner. All right. The Titanic now is sunk at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, 2 miles below, but let me talk to that in a later topic. It took 2 hours and 40 minutes for the RMS Titanic to sink, and 31,000 tons of water poured into the 5 compartments in the front of the ship. This caused the front to point sharply down, which caused the stern to rise. Let me just do a diagram on a symbol on this pencil I have here. So water poured towards the front of the ship, which caused the ship to sink deeper, which caused the stern to rise out of the water. So this is what it's like right now. And the forces that are being exerted from on the middle of the ship were too powerful for the Titanic to withhold, causing the ship to simply break in half and sink. So that is just basically how the Titanic split into two in a nutshell. So both pieces hit the bottom of the sea around 2 miles below, and they are located, the stern and the bow are located 2,000 feet apart of each other. But so anyway, there were 3,300 passengers that were on the Titanic, and I believe around 705 individuals luckily survived. However, 1,500, I think a little over 1,500 passengers passed away. And I know some people might think that passengers might have died with the ship because they would have drowned, or they were eaten by sharks, which I don't really think makes any sense. But the main cause of the survivors, or not the survivors, the people who main cause of the casualties were that they froze to death at waters of -2 degrees Celsius. That is 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and any person, human being, can only survive 30 minutes in that kind of temperature. So it was definitely that's how a lot of the people died on the Titanic. And it was 2 decades before anyone saw the Titanic again. So let me just move on. I'm sorry. 6 decades. Oh, actually, no. It was 6 decades before anyone saw the Titanic again. I'm sorry. My bad. So the reason no one could go down that deep, where the Titanic lies 12,500 feet at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, is because the Titanic lies of around 6,000 tons per square unit of pressure of water surrounding it. So any human being that went down that deep of water would crush. So but anyway, the reason I'm sorry, but in 1985, robotic submarines were created, and I think a rich oil man who's from Texas by the name of Jack Grimm decided to give it a shot, find the Titanic, and he bought a underwater submarine which contained a camera. However, when he went down to try to find the ship, he was unsuccessful, and when he saw, there was just fish and sand, and there was no sign of a ship. However, 3 months after that, a researcher by the name of Robert Ballard, who was already a famous explorer at the time, and he was well known, sent his submarine that he already had, named Argo, and not only did it contain a camera, which was pretty useful, but it wasn't that extremely useful. It contained sonar technology, which released sound waves to hit off any solid objects and bounce back. Anyway, that's how he was able to locate the ship. He sent sound waves and followed the sound of where the sound was pinging off any solid objects. And to his success, he found the stern and the bow lying 2,000 feet apart from each other in opposite directions. However, he did see something odd on the ship. He saw that there were these weird formation of like icicles. However, they're not icicles, they're called rusticles, and by the name, they're formation of rust. And these are they took up 6,500 artifacts from the Titanic and ran tests on them, and found that there was 27 different types of bacteria that were eating the iron not Eden Island, that's a different one. I'm sorry, but they found that there were 27 different types of bacteria. One of them was discovered in 2013 by the name of Halomonas Titanicae, and this bacteria fed on the iron on the ship, which is the reason why these very strange icicles formed. So, I don't know if I said this before, but this was a brand new bacteria that has never been discovered, and they just found it just a few years ago. So it used to be, people thought that the Titanic had at least maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years, in fact, some believed, until it would completely collapse because of the pressure of water. However, because of this new bacteria that was discovered, it's going to take maybe 10 to 20 years, maybe earlier, until the Titanic finally just disintegrates into a large rust cloud. However, although this bacteria is feeding on a piece of national history, it can be used for some good things, very good things actually. Scientists have discovered that this bacteria can feed on old naval rigs or old ships or old metal, scrap metal in the ocean that can be fed on, which would help clean the ocean, which would be great. So anyway, I just want to say I hope you learned a lot from what I had to say, and I thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Thank you.